Welcome to the Engrafted Word, with a mandate to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature, making disciples of all men, teaching them to obey everything Jesus has commanded, preaching righteousness, holiness, and the pursuit of consecration, without which no man shall see the Lord. Presented by Engrafted Word Church. And now, Pastor Christopher McMichael.
Only God can establish this. And here's where it comes back to us. He established it for us. He established it for us. And then our assignment from the beginning was to maintain it. Maintain what God has given us. Maintain time, maintain weather, in a sense, maintain food, what He's created. So let's review real quick before I advance, and we're going to start to land this in the next 15 minutes, maybe. Repeated tri-patterns in our study. Kingdoms have domain, dominion, charge. Creation acts are name, separate, assign function. Ancient Near East cosmology sees non-order, order, and disorder, chaos. Genesis 1 shows the functional creation of time, weather, and food. Post-flood continues God's design schema with time, weather, and food. All right, you see the 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. All of it points towards order, order, order. Chaos is bad. A trashy house is bad. A trashy car is bad. Disheveled hair is bad. Unkept life is bad. A disheveled checkbook is bad. God is against all of that. He's a God of order. I don't say it to condemn you. I say it so you know what to grow up into. If you're coming to the house of God, brush your hair, brush your teeth, fix something. Ancient Near East priests. Her title here is The Ancient Near East Roles of Kings and Priests. Some of this I'm repeating myself, but that's good because the power of education is repetition and the power of pastoring. Ancient Near East priests maintained what the gods had established through temple service. Now, this is an ancient Near East belief. The priests believed we maintain what the gods ordered by serving in the temple. And this was the most critical reason for their existence. By serving in their God's temple, they helped the cosmos stay ordered. If they neglected the temple, the cosmos would fall apart. In Egyptian culture, again, sharing a similar mindset, the king was to complete what was unfinished. So there was always non-order, but the king was assigned to bring order everywhere and to preserve what was existent, not as a status quo, but in a continuing dynamic and even revolutionary process of improvement and remodeling. And that's from a theologian and a scholar, Eric Hornung. So what's that saying? Priests stayed in the temple, maintaining the cosmos. Kings, as image bearer, went out and advanced the cosmos. They advanced the order. They went to look for more areas of non-order to bring order to it. That's what we should be doing. What areas are non-ordered? Let's bring order to it. Let's call those things that be not as though they were. Let's name things, let's separate them and assign them function. We're supposed to be doing it as Christians. Kings advanced the order by being the God's only image bearer and expanding their domain. Priests stayed in the temple or the garden, and they serviced their gods and maintained the established order through temple service. So this brings in a very cool concept. Genesis presents Adam as a king priest. How is that? By being an image bearer, only the kings could be that in the ancient Near East. By maintaining the order of the garden, that's a priestly duty. And by being asked to advance order, that's a king's duty. So what we see is Adam as an archetype for a royal priest. Do you remember what the last Adam is called? Jesus Christ, a royal priest. With this understanding, Genesis seems to present Adam as the archetypal royal priest made by Yahweh to do the work of priests and kings like those of the ancient Near East. Again, maintaining order and advancing it, thus advancing God's kingdom from the very beginning. This should get our minds scratching. And if you're paying attention and your kids aren't crawling on you like feral cats, you're already thinking, whoa, 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 whoa. Hopefully you're thinking. Hopefully this has got light bulbs going off. Like I said, this is deep, but the concept's incredibly simple. God's reset. Of course, Adam lost all of it, so God reset. We jump ahead to Moses and Israel. God wanted them to be a nation of priests. Why? Priests maintain order. That's their assignment. In their culture, let me back up. We think of priests as praying for us. We think of priests in the Catholic sense. We even probably think of priests as in making atonement for us. But that's not what priests did in the ancient world. Now, God adds the atoning work to the Levitical priests, but that's not what the original priests did. And that's not all the priests of Moses' day did. We're going to see that in a second. God wanted all of Israel to be a nation of priests. He said in Exodus 19, "You will be my kingdom of priests, my holy nation." Israel rejected that, so he selected the Levites instead. Then he commanded the construction of the tabernacle. A&E temples were made to be models of their cosmos. Now, that means the temples were designed to reflect how they viewed the cosmos, the creation. The temple of the pyramids in Giza reflect this. The base is the earth, the top is the sky. They're lined up with the constellations. These ancient temples reflected creation. Keep that in mind, because God's going to do the exact same thing with the tabernacle. The tabernacle is going to reflect creation. The temples, pagan temples, were models of the world that, quote, the omnipresent God filled to the limits. When he would come in and abide in that creation, that model of the cosmos, he could fill it and be completely in the cosmos. This is funny because our God is the cosmos. That sounds bad if you take it out of context. Our God inhabits the cosmos. Our God made the cosmos. So the tabernacle is going to follow the same cultural pattern in that the tabernacle of Moses is going to reflect the creation account. Once I show you this, you can't unsee it. Serving in the temples was seen as maintaining the order of the cosmos. They maintained the order of the cosmos that the gods had initiated. This symbolism is also seen in Moses' tabernacle, because everything else God has done through Genesis and Exodus patterns or mirrors the ancient Near East, but he keeps adding his Yahweh truth twist. However, as in most parallels, the real God changes things up. His initial temple, our God, Yahweh, the God of Israel, his initial temple would be a tabernacle, which is a portable tent. And that's a huge twist in and of itself. All the other tabernacles, all the other temples with these huge, massive pyramids and ziggurats that went up into the heavens, they're massive. And the living God gets a tent. This would have humbled the Hebrew stonecutters coming out of Egyptian work camps. We don't get to, our God doesn't have a temple? Not for a couple hundred years, because Israel's got to learn not to be like the world. Temples and tabernacles. However, the tabernacle, like all houses of worship from time immemorial, was designed to be full of symbolism. Even though it was a portable tent, it was still full of symbolism, and I'm going to show you that it preaches the gospel. I'm just so excited about the next couple slides. So tell your Pharaoh kids, I tell you what you do. Go get some snacks. Hide the snacks like Easter eggs in their room. Let them go hunt those snacks down, and then come back and hit play and watch the rest of this so you can stay focused. The tabernacle was designed to be a reflection of Genesis 1's record of God's creative acts, just like the pagan temples of the ancient Near East were designed to reflect the creative acts of their deities. And you still don't know how that is, but I'm going to show you, and then you can't unsee it. All symbolism, though, must be taught to be appreciated. The uninformed will not stoop at the complexity of the architectural details without an explanation. I throw up this picture of the basilica. The basilica means royal house, and you see this basilica. If we know that's a church instantly, we know it's not like anything in the city that this is in or the town, but you have to be taught the symbolism. And we look very quickly, we see that the things that are in the very center, the things that the church is centered on, is the heavens as the buttresses or the ceilings point your eyes towards the heavens. You look straight ahead to the wall. You see the crucifix. You see the apostles represented with those little statues. Then you see the Eucharist table, because this is an Episcopal basilica. The Eucharist table is centered because for the Episcopal and the High Church, that is fellowship and salvation. The thing in the foreground is the water baptismal for sprinkling. That is salvation to them. So the only things centered in this basilica are water baptism, the Eucharist, Holy Communion, and the crucifix, Christ on the cross, and the heavens. People are to the sides, the pulpits are to the sides, the choir is to the sides, because man is not the center of the house of God. We have to be taught the symbolism. In contrast, we look at this thing. I don't even know what this is. This looks like the MTV Awards or maybe the Grammy Awards. But no, that's a local church. Not our local church, but a church. There's no symbolism there. There's nothing sacred there. There's just a technology geek and a pastor trying to be cool for Instagram likes. Here's the tabernacle. Think about it. They come out of a culture where everybody's got ziggurats for their gods. And those ziggurats are models of the cosmos, of their cosmology. And they symbolize creation. And their priests maintain the order of the cosmos by serving in those temples. And God says to Moses on the mountain, hey, make sure you build me a tabernacle like I showed you in the spirit on the mountain. And so God's people get a portable tent. It's almost like a tabernacle from Temu. What is this? This is the living God that just wiped out the Egyptian army, and the people are going to worship him in a portable tent. This isn't even that big. You got 1 million Israelites, and this thing is 50 or 75 feet by 150 feet. You see there the brazen altar in the middle of the courtyard, then the brazen sea, which is where the priest would wash. The priests sacrificed and atoned for the sins at the brazen altar, the big box in the middle of the courtyard there. Actually, I've got this jumbo pointer. There's the brazen altar. That is where the atoning work took place 364 days of the year. Then when the priests wanted to go and they had to do their service in the tabernacle every day, they had to go cleanse themselves at the brazen sea, or this giant wash bin. That was for them when they wanted to go in or had to go in to the tabernacle. Then only once a year on the day of Yom Kippur did the high priest go into the Holy of Holies at the very back end where you see the pillar of fire coming out. Only once a year did the high priest go in and atone on the Ark of the Covenant, on the mercy seat. So for 364 days, roughly, because the Jewish calendar is a little bit different than ours, that Ark of the Covenant room was empty. Only once a year did the high priest go there to atone for us. Only once. Everything else took place at the brazen altar. Now, our next slide here is just a little schematic of the actual tabernacle, more like a map of it. It's not to scale, but as we see over here on the far right is a little icon representing the brazen altar, then the brazen sea where the priests would wash themselves. So just to reiterate the process, daily sacrifices were made here on the brazen altar, daily sin offerings, free will offerings, burnt offerings, peace offerings. And then every day, the priests had to go into the tabernacle proper to do what's called temple maintenance. Now, remember, all the atoning work, 364 days out of the year, took place here at the brazen altar. And then once a year on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, the high priest would enter into the Holy of Holies here on the left, represented by this icon that looks like the Ark of the Tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant. That was once a year. Other than that, this chamber was never accessed. It was left untouched. Now, every morning and every evening, the priests, not necessarily the high priest, but the priest would enter in to the holy place. This chamber here is called the holy place. This place on the left is called the Holy of Holies, or the most holy place. But every morning and every evening, the priests would enter in to do tabernacle maintenance. And they would first come and they would maintain the menorah, or the candlestand, with its 7 lamps. They would trim wicks, they would freshen the oil, and that was done in the morning and in the evening. Then they would come over here to the altar of incense. It only makes sense, no pun intended, that you would address light first so you could have some light before you did anything else that needed to be done. So then they would come over here and burn incense on the altar of incense. Also backing up, the entire inside of the tabernacle, it was all made of acacia wood overlaid with gold. So any light produced here would easily reflect and refract back and forth, illuminating the whole chamber. After they trimmed the wicks, topped the oil, they burned incense, and 6 days out of the week, that's all they did. Twice a day, morning and evening. On the 7th day, on the Sabbath, they would come over here to the table of showbread, and the table of showbread had 12 loaves of bread. Don't think of bunny bread or American white bread. Think of giant unleavened cakes. 12, 6 on each side for the 12 tribes of Israel. In the middle was a bowl of frankincense that would be applied to it. And those loaves stayed for 6 days. On the 7th day, they would be replaced, and then the priest would eat them in a sacred place. And so that was only maintained 1 day out of the week. Okay, so you see it. We got brazen altar. That's where the atoning work took place every day, 364 days out of the year. Brazen sea. That is where the priests would wash themselves before they entered into the tabernacle, the holy place, the first chamber, to do daily maintenance in the morning and the evening. And then the Holy of Holies, which was only entered into once a year on the day of Yom Kippur for the Day of Atonement, where the blood of the Passover lamb would be sprinkled on the mercy seat, or poured out on the mercy seat here. This is the golden box that had the 10 Commandments, Aaron's rod that budded, and a pot of manna, and you have the cherubim overseeing the mercy seat, or what was considered the throne of God. Okay, as we've been saying, in ancient Near East cultic practices, don't let the word cultic scare you, it just means a religious system. The temples were maintained by priests, and they believed that by maintaining the temple, they helped maintain the order of the cosmos that their deities had established. So we're seeing this pattern that everything God is doing through Israel and for Israel is very much in parallel to what the pagans were doing, because that's the culture in which they live. But we have what I keep calling the Yahweh truth twist, where at the very end, he twists the standard and adds divine sovereign truth. So what we should expect to find then is if all the other temples of the era were models of the cosmos, and the priests served in those temples to maintain the order ordained by their God, we should help to see the same thing here, and in fact we do. In fact, as I sit here and look at this model or this schematic of the tabernacle, I see Genesis chapter 1, the first 3 days of creation. Do you see it? Do you see the first 3 days of creation? Do you see maintaining the first 3 days of creation? It's okay. Now remember, the only work that was atoning took place out here on the brazen altar. And then once a year, the lamb's blood from the brazen altar, the Passover lamb, was entered into the Holy of Holies to be shed and sprinkled for the atoning of Israel. That means for 364 days of the year, the work that took place in the holy place here, this what's called the antechamber, that was non-atoning. It was simply called temple maintenance. And that's the same vernacular used in ancient Near East cultic practices. That just means they were maintaining their God's temple, and in maintaining their God's temple, they were maintaining the order of the cosmos. So check this out. This to me is astonishing. It blesses me. I hope it blesses you. Where are the first 3 days of creation? Every day, the priest comes in, and the first thing he does is maintain light. And he does it in the evening, and he does it in the morning. And he maintains the very first thing God ever assigned function to, which was let there be light. And how many days of creation are there? 7 days. How many lamps are there on the menorah? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 days of evening and morning light being maintained. Now, it gets a little tricky because I don't know exactly where the heavens are. You know, we would call weather. Where's weather represented? But I think we easily find where the food function. Remember, we're dealing with 3 functions: time and light. That's the first one. Weather, the function for weather is ordained on the second day. Then the basis or the function of food. And over here at the table of showbread, food is represented, and it's maintained only once every 7 days because, truth be told, and it should be intuitive to us, food isn't harvested every day. If these are grain or wheat loaves, and they are, that's an event. That's a seasonal creation. That's a seasonal process. So it stands to reason that the bread is only replaced every 7 days. It's in season. It's not maintained every day because you can't harvest wheat 365 days out of the year. You harvest it in season. So the difficult thing I found is, where then is weather? We've got the first and the third day maintained by the temple priest, tabernacle priest. We have light and time, evening and morning, evening and morning, evening and morning the first day, 7 lamps representing 7 days of creation, and true to A&E culture, ancient Near East culture, he is maintaining the order of the cosmos by maintaining his God's temple. We have light on the first day, the basis for food on the second day. Where then is the basis for weather? It would help us, I believe, if we took the schematic and instead of it being pointed to the north and to the east and looking at it down, if we turned it from horizontal to vertical. Do you see it yet? Do you see where weather is represented? I don't think you do. It's okay. So let's zoom in. Can you see it yet? What we're looking at is a vertical view of the tabernacle. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Remember, the priest comes in, he maintains light. He does something here at the altar of incense, and then every 7 days he replaces bread. So that means that the altar of incense, if this pattern is accurate, the altar of incense has to represent weather. If the first day is light, and that's what's dealt with first, and the second day is weather, and the altar of incense is tended to secondly, and then food is a seasonal harvest, and that's only tended to over here every 7 days, where in the world or how do we represent weather with the altar of incense? Well, we burn incense on it, and we create a firmament. And if you can see that firmament, then you also understand this Jewish concept that the veil, the famous veil, this is the firmament veil, and it separates the earthly realm down here from the heavenly realm. What is the Holy of Holies? This is heaven. This is God's realm. This is the spirit realm where God sits on his throne and where the angels circle him crying, holy, holy, holy. And nobody can enter into the heavenly realm. We're bound to the earthly realm. But Jesus Christ, our high priest, once and for all, has passed into the heavens to atone for us on the altar of God. Do you see that? First day of creation maintained through the menorah, light in the morning, light in the evening. Evening and morning is the first day, 7 lamps, 7 days of creation. Then the basis for weather is established, and the altar of incense puts forth a very dense cloud. That cloud is purposely set against the veil, which is also symbolic of the realm or the barrier between heaven and earth, or the natural and the spiritual realm. And then the table of showbread maintained every 7 days, where the bread is refreshed. So you see, true to ancient Near East tradition, God allowed his people to follow in a similar pattern, and their job as a priest was to maintain the order God had established and do so symbolically. Now, what's also powerful, remember the entire sides here are covered in gold. That represents glory, the glory of God. Same with the heavenly realm, covered in gold. And the Bible tells us that the whole earth is filled with his glory. That's what the gold represents here. The whole earth is filled with his glory. And now our job is to do what the priest did before us, and that is to maintain the order that God established and prevent chaos and disorder. God's plan has never changed. If Adam was the first royal priest called to maintain an advanced order but failed, and if Israel became the next instrument, a nation of kings and priests called to maintain and advance God's order through the law, but couldn't. And if Jesus Christ became the great royal priest who successfully purchased back the full authority to reset, create, and maintain order, and if that's what we are now called, 1 Peter 2:9 says we are a royal priesthood. We're just like Adam. We're just like the nation of Israel in its positional offices. We are now like Jesus Christ in our vocation. If that's what we are now, called to maintain the functions of order through the gospel of peace, through the authority of the believer, if that's what we're called to be, why do we limp through life lazily, living for self, doing nothing with the gospel we've been given? Why do we limp? Failing to live as priests, maintaining the order of what we've already been given, and failing to live as kings, authorized as God's image bearer, further advancing his kingdom in every arena of our lives. Why are we living this way? The amount of chaos in our lives can reveal the degree to which we are disobedient to our creation vocation. The amount of chaos we're experiencing, the amount of turmoil, tumult, the amount of, I want to quit, it's so hard, I want to quit. My husband this, my wife that, my kids this, my money that. That's your fault. Because you've not maintained the creation order as a royal priest. Why did we get saved? Do you think we got saved in the South just so we could vote for some dirtbag GOP who's had 3 marriages and 17 mistresses, but bless God, he goes to church once a month at a Presbyterian church, so he's our man for office? You think that's what the gospel is? Voting for some dirtbag Republican who understands border control? That's the level of our Christianity? You think that's what the kingdom is? When the creation is preached in the tabernacle, and it's a cross-section of how we live. The whole earth is full of God's glory. The kingdom of God brings God's glory into the earth. We pray, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth like it is in heaven. And what do we do with it? We make church a spectatorship, and we have 3 days to our next worship experience. What a shallow rape of the gospel of Jesus Christ. The amount of chaos in our lives can reveal the degree to which we are disobedient to our creation vocation. We are created to be peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers. That's the authority to go and order the disordered. We're created to be peacemakers, not chaos maintainers. To be continued. Hopefully you got all that.
Thank you for joining us today. We trust that the preaching has been a delight and blessing to your soul. Be sure to join us every Sunday and every Wednesday at 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. for the preaching of God's Word. For more information, contact our website at www.engraftedword.org.